Welcome one and all to the channel, you gorgeous people. Thank you so much for stopping in. As you can see in the title, this is a Datsun 240Z. It is my Datsun 240Z. And it dawned on me, I've owned this car for quite some time, only a couple of years after I started driving actually, and I've never done a review on this car. And it is just such a fun car. They have like such a fan base, and for good reason, because they're such amazing cars. They are like the grandfather of all Japanese sports cars. So you know what? I figured I would talk a little bit about this car and go through everything about it, all the stuff I've done. This is a purist car to me. I'm not going to change it up too much. You know, a lot of people end up doing the wide body flares and whatever else, and I love that look. I really do. That look is so nice. The thing is, I'm just a purist. But yeah, this car is just such a beauty to me. All right, so let's get into it. The wind has subsided. Let's get into it, guys. So I think what really drew my attention to these cars was hearing about them through my dad. He had a couple of them. So I think he had two 240Zs. One of them really sadly was crashed by a woman he was dating back in the day. So one of them is now gone. And then he also had a 2000 Roadster. I can't recall the year exactly off the top of my head, but he just raved about the both of them. He said they were just quick, agile, so much fun. They were reliable for their time. So it just really got me interested in these cars. And as time went on, I actually set out. Like, it was a mission for me to get my hands on one of them, just because you saw them like as a kid and you're going, oh my gosh, what is that car? And especially when they're done correctly, like you just look at like the lines of these cars and they're absolutely gorgeous. Like the sleek like 3/4 panel here, you know, you got your rust there, but it doesn't matter about that. And I remember I was going down the highway and I was just a kid. My mom was driving and I just remember hearing this screaming sound. Didn't know what it was, because when you're a kid, you're always like, holy God, what the heck is that? I mean, as adults, we still do that. When you hear a nice car go driving by, you always run to the window or whatever you are in your front porch to see exactly what it is. But sure enough, it was a red Datsun 240Z just screaming by. So probably had some modifications, but when you're a kid, everything is just so much more, it's just exaggerated and embellished in your mind. So for me, it really like, it stuck with me ever since then. And when I got this car, I was pretty fortunate because they were a little bit more common back then. In the last decade or so, they become rare to find just because I think they've all been chopped up, maybe melted down into other cars. So they were a little bit more reasonably priced back then. I mean, they all have issues, no matter what. Even from the factory, I think they had issues. Probably just the primer and the paint jobs just were prone to rust and whatnot. Maybe the metals that they used. But it's really hard to find a really good example of these cars from the factory without paying, well, a complete, you know, crazy price for it. And funny enough, when I got this car, I knew nothing about them because, you know, you had to go on the internet and you had to go through all the forums. The technology's come a long way since then, but just a young mentality. So regardless, when I saw it, I was pretty much sold. The guy where I bought it from actually had a shop. So I asked him to put on the hoist because you know your basic stuff to look at brakes, tires and whatnot. But I wanted to see the chassis. And when they put it up on the hoist, it was actually in really good shape. So that was a big selling point. But when it comes to the engines, I mean, I had no idea. I just knew it was an inline six and it made pretty sounds back then. So I didn't know really anything else about it when I went to look at it. It was a pretty car. And I'm like, you know what? I really want one of these. And it was probably going to be a good investment in my mind, which it turned out to be. So can't complain on that side of things. All right, so speaking of the engine, let's pop the hood here. That doesn't always work properly. Sometimes you got to play with the cable to get it open. Datsun things, right? Okay, so it doesn't have the factory 2.4 liter in it, the L24. It came with an L28, which is on its way out. I didn't compression test it. I didn't know anything about it at the time. I was like, you know what, looks good to me. And I just took the car as it was, and I drove the crap out of it for probably about a year until it started misfiring horribly and had a burnt valve. But again, didn't really know too much about cars and engines back then. So I put another L28 into it just because L28s tend to be the way to go. And I got some triple Delordos for it. And it's funny because a lot of people they're either Webers or Mikunis. Mikunis are essentially just gold now. They're very, very pricey. So I wanted to try something a little bit different, so I started reading about the Delordos, and people tend to say that they're a little bit better than the Webers. But anyways, they do the exact same thing, right? They make pretty sounds. You have fuel that shoots through all of those and whatever else. So when I got this L28 off the previous gentleman, he said it was a fresh rebuild, which is always a good thing. I got a compression test done on it, and I believe he said it just had a mild cam on it, and that's about it. So it's not like anything fast or whatnot, but it does make a really good sound, especially coupled with the triple carbs on it. Like these things, when they start to open up, they just absolutely sing. You just hear induction sounds. I do get a lot of exhaust noise coming through here, but at the same time, it's that perfect symphony of like exhaust plus induction sound. So speaking of sound, it came with the stock header when I originally got it, and they actually sound really good with the stock header. It has like more of a classic Datsun sound, but I really wanted to get that screaming, you know, Datsun sound that you hear in the Japanese drag strips and whatnot, even though it's not a built engine, so it's never going to really scream high. It really only goes up to 6,000 RPMs. But I opted for a 6-to-1 style header, and honestly, it sounds phenomenal. It actually kind of sounds like an RB a little bit, but it has more of an old school sound to it because of the carburetors, the inefficient fuel combustion. But yeah, as it stands now, people always say, hey, what have you done to it? It sounds amazing. But yeah, I find the 6-to-2 versus the 3-to-2, which is, again, the classic sound, to me, it's just so much more appealing. And I know you guys have noticed this custom throttle linkage that I've made here. Super badass. 10 out of 10, recommend to a friend. It's just basically raw and whatever else, but like, I don't really care. I just wanted something that was, you know, just going to actuate throttle linkages off the side of the carbs, and honestly, does a good job of it. They're all in line, so can't complain. I thought at first it was going to be a nightmare, but no, it's held up pretty well. Also, if you do go triple carbs on these, doesn't matter what brand you get yourself a heat shield. As you can see, I have this nice custom heat shield. It was really expensive, cost me a lot of money, unfortunately. Just kidding. It's a piece of sheet metal that I've just fabbed up because these cars have the intake and exhaust on the exact same side. Makes it really easy to do things with like the ignition system. Like doing spark plugs on this car is literally like a 5-minute job. But yeah, just get yourself something to put down. That's why I have the heat shield there. And it just keeps, because like the float bowls underneath, like once you start learning triples, you want them to stay cool. So on hot days, yeah, the car huffs and puffs because you probably have like boiling fuel in the float bowls. And it does get pretty hot where I am. Sometimes we get up to like over 100. So I don't like driving it on those days. It's not the happiest, but yeah, just something to make note of. I love these little things here. Just as one of the little creature comforts. You have your reservoir for your washer fluid. These are called inspection lids, by the way. You have another one over there. Goes over the battery. Yeah, you like that nifty strap that I have holding my battery, because sometimes I change things around. So that's just, yeah, we're going to move on from that one. But anyways, again, highly recommend get yourself a heat shield for your triples. If you guys have any questions, just shoot them in the comments, because there's just a learning curve. They're an older car, so you got to just explore, you know, spend your time working on them. But it's worth it, because once you get in, you take them out, it's honestly such a blast to drive. All right, moving on to the interior. Okay, don't laugh here. My door handle broke, which is a very common Datsun thing. So I actually have to keep the window down so I can reach inside to get the door handle. Datsun people that watch this, you will understand, because it's happened to so many people. So give me 1 second. All right. Get that open. I put towels on the ground so I don't mess up my mats, because I have brand new mats for this car. The interior is a little bit messy, but it doesn't matter. It shows extremely well regardless. So, it did have the factory seats in it when I got it. They were pretty beat up, but I am a large person and I didn't fit in this car all that well. And I found I had to change up some of the seat hardware on it so it could just go to a certain point. It actually goes far back from the factory, but it's just the way that the seats sat. These are much flatter. These are like a bride style, and they're a bucket, so I fit in them really well. I went with the classic 90s steering wheel, the deep corn. I went with the black because, oh, it is so sleek. Let's see some other stuff here. Didn't have to do too much. Some people, you know, want to keep like the factory radios and whatnot, but now this has an aftermarket one in it, just so I can play Bluetooth and whatever else. I could, again, get like a more factory style one that plays Bluetooth, but I really like it as it is. Don't laugh at the mats, everyone. Got this nifty wideband holder here because my other one didn't want to stay on. So it's just good to keep an eye on your fuel ratios. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much factory. It is a 5-speed in here now. It's got a 280ZX, close ratio 5-speed in here, which, oh my gosh, what a blessing it is. Makes all the difference, that right there. Just goes through the gear so quickly, much more efficiently. One of the things I love about this car, even though people never really know about it, they have this little map light down there. It took me forever to find that thing because I had no idea what I was looking for. Most of the stuff doesn't work on it, honestly. I need a new blower motor. My wiper motor also doesn't work, so I just put Rain-X on the windshield, and that does what I need it to do. I try to avoid rain anyways, but it's just a Sunday cruiser, honestly. It comes with a sunroof. I didn't opt for this, but hey, you know what? I'm not going to complain if it came with it. So with that all being said, the car definitely has its issues. It is, after all, it's 51 years old this year. That's wild to me. Honestly, when you get them up to spec, they just run amazingly. Like, it's the craziest thing. In so many ways, it runs better than the modern cars, but it's what you'd expect. Honestly, it's a sports car. Anyways, with that all being said, I think we should go for a drive. So let's talk about driving the Datsun. Obviously, it's a 70s car. So as soon as you get into this car, you feel like you're implanted in the 70s. You have the full aroma, the smells, like the environment. It's a small car. So you just feel like you're just like teleported into a different time zone. You have the exhaust. This obviously is not stock, but just the sounds, it's so raw. You honestly feel like you're in a time capsule. As soon as I get in this car, it feels so much different than any other car. And I have to tell people, if you're not happy, you've never driven a Datsun. So here we are. And it's nice, you know, when you get up to like a cruising RPM, these cars never had long gearing in them. They have like close ratio gearing. Their top speed wasn't anything crazy. I think it was like 220 kilometers an hour. This one's probably around that too, because I put a 5-speed close ratio gearbox in it. So it loves to like just go right through the gears. It's just fast and it feels precise, but at the same time, it's definitely not like a car you want to be doing like 130, 120. So like 70 plus miles an hour on the highway with. We'll let these guys go by. Series, when they're done properly, they just sing. I love my like 6-to-1 style just because it gets all those frequencies all together into a single like channel. Some people love the 6-to-2s or the 3-to-2 setups. For me, it's just that high-pitched screaming sound that I love. Gives you a bit of a contrast or an idea as to what you're into. 6-to-1 for me personally. But again, if you want that classic Datsun sound, it's the 3-to-2s. That's what most guys run. But you know when you watch those Japanese cars, like at the drag strip, they usually have some like thick tube 6-to-1s and they just scream and howl. They almost sound like just freak show Ferraris. So again, it's just personal preference.
yeah, even when you're driving, the car feels so well planted. It feels so precise. Even for a car that's turns 51 this year, it feels so precise. Like you feel everything in the road. And I say to people, if you have one of these, one of the cooler things you can do is you can change out the steering coupler. It's a little bushing that goes in there. It came with a factory rubber one. A lot of people's are just beat and like tattered, torn up. But you can get a polyurethane one, and it just feels so precise. Like the car just feels like it's on rails. Obviously, being an older car, it has its squeaks, has its rattles. This car, I bought it with the sunroof. I wouldn't have done it myself. I would have kept it very original. But you know what, though? On nice days, it's really nice to have. The only downside is they're smelly cars. You get the aroma of all the different fumes and whatnot, so it's just another inlet. But I gotta say, it doesn't matter. When you're driving this car, you do not care about the smells and everything else. In fact, you almost welcome them. I always tell people, if you're going to be driving around this car, be ready to be blessed by the 70s. Because it's just behind it, inside it, no matter what, you always smell it. But yeah, it has its typical squeaks and rattles, but it's all part of the experience. Like when you're going to drive an old school car, you don't care about creature comforts. It's a car that you're going to go out and you're going to enjoy, you're going to get attention. Like this car turns heads wherever it goes. It's amazing. Like especially on days like today, like I was just looking over there. And as much as like you get the young generation, like the boomers love this car. They will tell you everything about theirs and what they've done to them, whatever else, or when they had them. It's always the best. Like I said, my dad had one, and he said it was one of the best cars he's ever owned. And in typical fashion, regrets getting rid of it. Of course, of course, of course. I mean, so if you have one, or you can find one, hold on to it, but I'm sure you already know that. Alright. See if we can get some induction sound. Makes some good sounds. It just sounds so amazing. The only thing is the exhaust does drone out the intake sound just a little bit, but I don't care. It has that perfect balance. And it is absolutely torquey. Even with the mild cam in this car, it is such a usable power band. You can punch it at like 2,500 RPMs and it just goes. Like you're not gonna snap your neck or like, it's not the fastest car out there, but regardless, it just feels like so usable. Like right now, I'm cruising at 2,000 RPMs, 5th gear, pulls, no problem. Don't have to downshift on like highways and whatnot. It's beautiful. But honestly, even the downshifts, just so like dialed in, so precise. Aside my squeaky brakes. It's never fun. Squeaky brakes kind of suck. Yeah, like quick throttle blips. Spot on. I built this car just for Sunday drives and just going out with friends. It's honestly perfect. Like you go out, hit the back roads, the car is just absolutely just, it's in its element. When you go out in twisty roads, there's a couple areas where I am, and like you can go through the different elevations, and like there's some more European style roads out here, and honestly it is just at home with that stuff. Like it's just so precise. You go back and forth, especially with that with the new steering bushing. It's just so dialed in. But for me, I just want something that I can cruise comfortably, like at 60 miles an hour, 100 clicks at. To me, that feels perfect. Just backcountry cruising. But yeah, just the questions you get when you go out to car shows, because you don't see these cars anywhere that you go. Like, it's actually starting to become more common to see Skylines and newer Supras and even NSXs. It's funny, like, you go to car shows here and you see different stuff, but I feel like I'm the only one that brings it out. You might see like a random one, you might see a 260 or a 280. So it's nice. You know, you have a car that's never going to be replicated and just become too saturated when you go to car meets and whatnot. So, not to throw any shade at anybody that brings different cars, because like, I'm a car lover across the spectrum, but it's such a good feeling. So yeah, thanks for coming out watching, everybody. Again, you're gorgeous. We'll talk to you guys soon.